All right, 1 Peter chapter 3. 1 Peter 3, and we're going to be looking at verses 1 through 7. So 1 Peter 3, 1 through 7. This is, likewise, wives, be subject to your own husbands, so that even if some do not obey the word, they may be won without a word by the conduct of their wives, when they see your respectful and pure conduct. Do not let your adornment be external, the braiding of hair and the putting on of gold jewelry, or the clothing you wear, but let your adorning be the hidden person of the heart, with the imperishable beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. For this is how the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves, by submitting to their own husbands, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. And you are her children, if you do good and do not fear anything that is frightening. Likewise, husbands, live with your wives in an understanding way, showing honor to the woman as the weaker vessel, since they are heirs with you of the grace of life, so that your prayers may not be hindered. So here, after talking before about how we're to be subject to government, and then he talked about the idea of servants and masters, now he talks about the family, about the marital relationship and how that is supposed to go in accordance with what God's plan is for marriage. So first he talks about the conduct of wives. How are wives to operate in the marital relationship? Well, he says they're to be subject to their husbands, and he says subject to your own husbands. I think a lot of times people don't see that. A wife is to be subject to her own husband, not anybody else's husband, right? And that's the relationship is close. And a lot of times people get a lot of heartburn out of this idea, subject, or as Paul says it, Paul calls it submission. And so they'll get a lot of heartburn, and they'll be like, I'll hear a lot of women that will say, well, I ain't going to submit to no man, and I'm not going to be subject to any man. And I understand that. I understand that because we're very individualistic, and especially in the United States, we're very individualistic. But I think we're missing the point of what it is that Peter and Paul are talking about when Peter says to submit, and when Peter says to be subject to your own husbands. The idea is respect. That is really the idea that's coming along here, and it has to do with really how we're built, how men and women are built different. Can we all agree men and women are built a little bit different, right? We know physically we're a little bit different, but emotionally and mentally it's just a little bit different. The kind of things that, I'll get Martha flowers. If Martha got me flowers, I would think something's going on. This is weird. Why would she get me flowers? I don't want flowers. She was nice. She got me something that does really touch my heart. She got me Reese cups that were shaped like little hearts. It was good. I got to eat half of them till when I was gone. I came back and Weston had eaten the rest of them, and then to add insult to injury, left the open wrappers right beside my box of candy, just to let me know what was going on. But he promises that the next time he goes to the store, he's going to get me some to replace what it was he ate. But we operate a little bit differently, right? Men just, there's certain things that men like, and there's always exceptions. There are exceptions to every rule. But, there's, a lot of women, they like certain TV shows where a man would like a different TV show. And it goes with our emotions, too. There's something that men desire, and that is to be respected. They want respect. And there's something that women want, as a general rule, even more than respect, and that is to be loved. And so what happens in a good marital relationship is the wife respects the husband loves the wife, and the more the husband loves the wife, the more she respects her husband, and the more she respects her husband, the more he loves her, and then the relationship grows into what it's supposed to be. Respect is the idea, because you can even see in verse 2, he says, when they see your respectful and pure conduct. He uses the word respectful there. Head of, it really just comes down to the man is to be the head of the household. The husband is to be the head of the household. Does that mean that it's that you rule it with an iron fist and you're like, whatever I say goes, I'm the man, you have to listen to me? No. It's a team experiment. And any good leader that wouldn't listen to anybody else is not a very good leader. And so you have to do that. But it does go that is the head, that the man is the head of the household. The husband is the head of the household and should be the spiritual head of the household. I think too often the men are not the spiritual head of the household that they need to be. But there's a benefit, a great benefit that comes from this. And he says it here. He says, be subject to your own husband, even if he's an unbeliever, because maybe, just maybe, by you doing what you're supposed to do in respecting him, that maybe he will see your conduct, he will see your respectful conduct, he will see your pure conduct, and then even without a word that you have to say, he'll be won to Christ. And that's a great benefit, a great benefit. I have a feeling that there are a lot of men out there that they got right with God because of their wives. And that's an important thing. He goes on to talk about adornment or adorning. And he says, don't let your adorning be external. I've always brought this up a lot of times when we talk about, well, you should wear your Sunday best, or you got to dress up nice and all this kind of stuff. Well, the Bible really, a couple times in the New Testament, talks about what you wear, and both times it's talking about not dressing too nice. And that's really what it says. That's what he's talking about here. He says, don't let your beauty be on the outside. Braiding up your hair, he says, or putting on gold jewelry or the clothing you wear. He's basically saying it doesn't matter so much about what's on the outside. It doesn't matter so much about how your hair looks. It doesn't matter so much about how your clothes look. It doesn't matter so much about how the jewelry looks on you. He says what matters is what's on the inside. Does your heart have some nice jewelry on it? Is your heart's hair fixed up real nice? Is your heart got some really nice clothes on? Is what is important? Because that's what leads you to holiness, is being right on the inside, being adorned on the inside, and it makes you ready to serve God. It makes you ready to serve God, and he says that Sarah was a good example of that. He said that's how the holy women, says in verse 5, the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves. And he says they did that. Part of the way that you do it, part of the way that you have your heart adorned in that way, is by submitting to your own husband, just as Sarah did to Abraham. Now, does that mean that Abraham made all the decisions and he slammed his fist down and said whatever? No. I'll give you an example. We've been looking at Abraham's life as I've been preaching through Genesis on Sunday morning. And do you remember when they had the thing where Hagar, it was Sarah's idea for Hagar to go and to be with Abraham so that Abraham could have a kid, and then after it happens, Sarah gets mad at Hagar and gets upset, and what is it that Abraham says to her? She's yours, do what you want with her. If you want to send her away, you can send her away. She's yours. You do what you need to do. You do what you need to do. Whatever you want to do, you can do that. So, all right, so I think a lot of times people just see that word, submit or subject, and they think that it is some kind of inequality, but that's not what it is. And I think we see that even more when we look in verse 7 and see what he says husbands are supposed to do. So what's the conduct of husbands? First, he says to live with your wives in an understanding way. And that is showing love. Understanding what it is that she needs to feel valuable and to grow in Christ is by love and doing what is right for her. To putting her above yourself. To honor her, he says, as the weaker vessel. A lot of people get all twisted up about that too. What do you mean, a weaker vessel? I'm a strong woman. Well, yes, there are a lot of strong women out there. But for the most part, in a physical confrontation between a man and a woman, who's going to win? It's going to be the man, right? Because the man is stronger. Why are we stronger? Because men have more testosterone, women have more estrogen, and so men's muscles get bigger, men get stronger, and women, while there are a lot of strong women out there, not nearly as strong as the men. And that's just the way it is. And so he says, look, you show her honor, because why? Because you could be very abusive, very mean, very hurtful, but you don't, because you love her. And because you understand her and you do what is right for her. And he tells the men to do this because he says, since they are heirs with you in the grace of life. Now that sounds like equality to me, doesn't it? He says, you're an heir and you're an heir. Both equal with God. It is equality. Just because people have different roles doesn't mean that they're unequal. I can't walk up and veto some horrible bill that Congress passes and then say, well, why can't I veto this bill? Well, because you're not the president. That's why you can't veto the bill, Mr. Walker. Well, that's not fair. That's unequal, right? Well, no, it's not unequal, right? Joe Biden's the president. I'm not the president. And so I can't veto bills. I can't sign bills. And it's the same way in the relationship. There's a man and there's a woman. They complement each other. Their strengths complement each other. If you've got somebody that has all the characteristics of a man and another one has all the characteristics of the man, the relationship's not going to work out right. But when you have the characteristic of the man and characteristic of the woman, they can work together and have a super strong marriage, and they can be together. Being complementary does not mean that you are unequal. And then he gives a warning to the husbands. It's a good warning. You either do this or your prayers are going to be hindered. And, I've talked with people before, and we've talked about it when I just feel like my prayers aren't getting answered. My prayers aren't getting answered. I'm like, well, how are you treating your wife? No, you didn't understand me. I said my prayers aren't being answered. How are you treating your wife? I'm telling you my prayers aren't being... Well, I'm asking you the question, how are you treating your wife? Because he specifically says that your prayers are hindered if you're not living with your wife in a loving and doing what's right for her and honoring her as that weaker vessel and understanding that you are heirs together in equality. So, something that should scare us, that our prayers might be hindered, that God might say, you're not treating your wife right. Stop talking to me. God would say, stop talking to me until you get it right with your wife. And that's what we have to remember, men. We have to do what is right by our wives, and by doing so, we do what's right by God. Any questions on that?